Alrighty, Julie, let's talk about grammar, the big
Let's do.
word,
Yes.
grammar.
Mm.
So grammar just brings up a lot of feelings of different emotions for me. And I think I've told you this from the very first moment that we had coffee when I was in grad school, and I said to you, I don't know enough about language knowledge, about grammar. I don't know what a modal verb is, what an infinitive is. And so that aside, it brought on a lot of guilt and shame, and I've had to wrestle with that across the course of 8 years of writing our paper together, of my fear of language knowledge. Now, why is it that as a teacher, I think about grammar in such a discrete, isolated, it's this big thing that I should be fearful of, rather than see it as hey, this is something that is actually important that can help your students, that can help you become a better writer.
Okay. Let's just go with some of the words you used. The modals, I don't know, hedging, did you say? Boosters?
Yeah, infinitives.
Yeah, infinitives. You're pointing out the different, bits of grammar, right? Like word class and, there's nouns and verbs and adjectives and so on. That's the way I learn grammar too. And so let's call this the traditional way in which we're thinking about grammar, like rules. There are these concepts and there are rules. And ultimately, that kind of thinking, I think, leads to thinking about accuracy and correctness. We got to get it right. And that's also the discourse, the things that people tell us. It's like, oh, your sentence is grammatically wrong. Okay. And that's all that was taught to us. So the idea of shame and fear when you don't know those things, I think is pretty natural that somebody's going to feel that. And you're probably feeling it even more because you are training to be a language and literacy teacher. If you are going to be a teacher of, I don't know, PE or cooking or something, maybe it's not, as shameful for you. So I think that's actually a natural feeling, but I do see that a lot in my own students, and it makes me wonder as a teacher educator if the next generation of teachers all feel that. And at least for you, you felt quite open enough to tell me, but there's a lot of people who don't. So what does that mean in terms of getting out there and teaching the next generation of students language and literacy? Okay, if you don't know it yourself, how do you expect the next generation to learn?
And I would say that there was a turning point, especially in our coursework when I was exposed to functional grammar and field, tenor and mode. And I went into schools and I actually saw that being taught. And I remember emailing you just really excited about, hey, I was on placement and this school, they were teaching students in a humanities class about field and how you needed to adjust your tenor when you write, a historical report and things like that. And I was very excited by that. And I think, as you say, I used to think of it very traditionally, but when I saw it functionally and socially, how it could help people make meaning, I think that's where I started to think, I should be rethinking my attitude and disposition towards grammar. And can we go a bit more into that about, grammar? Like, let's talk about an example of grammar and how that is helpful for our students. And there's this sentence here. There's this original text and a modified text here that, you've used plenty of times with your students as well. And yeah, I've seen this many times, but there are still certain questions that I have around it. So the original text here says, it's in a science report, and the original text here says, the waste and dead bodies are broken down by decomposers who return the matter to the soil. And I remember you telling us as students, hey, if you were to modify this text for an EAL learner, how would you do that? I remember half the class being stumped, by the way. We were all like, we have no idea how to do that. I was like, remove a conjunction, or there wasn't even a conjunction.
Did you even know that there were terms like active and passive?
I think I knew of them, but I didn't know how they operated. Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I didn't realize what they would do. I understood that, in an active voice, you would write in a particular way, but I never could articulate that you always position the subject first and it's followed by the verb and the object. I could never tell you the explicit way in which that language feature would work.
Okay.
And so when you put up the modified text, I think we could get a sense of how we would modify it, but we couldn't name the process of the modification.
Do you want to read that out?
Yeah. So the modified text says, decomposes break down the waste and dead bodies. This puts the matter back into the soil. And so for me, I was like, that's so much easier to read. Like I'm not wrestling with the whole, what do you mean the waste and the dead bodies are broken down? It's the decomposing. That's the action. You're fronting that and it eases the processing load. And this puts the matter back into the soil. You're breaking up the sentence, right? That I could identify that as an obvious difference, but I didn't realize the switch in the sentence structure. You're moving from a complex to a simple sentence. Can you explain what is happening when we're modifying text and how is that helpful for all of our learners?
But when you look at the modified version, what do you see as being more comprehensible for, let's say, a language learner?
That's a great question. I would say that it's easier because you're talking about a process, right? You're talking about a cause and an effect. And instead of putting the effect first, you are fronting the cause. That cause being put first is making that act of processing easier because you see the action, you see the decomposers as the root. Yeah, that's what I would say.
The subject that's doing something.
Yeah.
The cat sat on the mat. These are more quick ways in which we can probably, understand what the meaning of a sentence, especially as students get into, higher levels and have to do more complex reading and comprehension. If it's all in the passive, it's going to be a bit more complicated for them, isn't it? So in the process of trying to understand something, I think it is very important for us to help students to maybe change the sentence a bit so that they can get the meaning. But in the domain of science reports, passive is the lingo that you need to know to understand how science reports work. So why do we need to have the passive voice in science reports, for instance?
I'm actually not sure. I feel like that's just assumed knowledge, but maybe we should look it up.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
This is a perfect opportunity for us to do something like that because, this is not stuff that we all know. We all need to use the resources around us. So it would be good for us to maybe use AI, for instance, in this case. And maybe we could even put the example in and find out directly why the sentence belongs in a science report?
Let's do it. This is what I got.
Yep.
This sentence fits a science report because it focuses on the process and not the actor. So you need to, in this sentence, it's foregrounding the process of decomposition, and that's the scientific phenomenon being explained. And so that's the phenomenon that's being focused on. You need the passive voice because you need to remove any sense of an actor, a person, due to the science genre needing to sound factual and neutral rather than story-like.
Okay. So that's a good answer. In mine, the thing that kind of rings out to me and something that I could probably remember is in science, the focus is on what happens, not who or what does it, right? So we're trying to understand what is happening, with the phenomena that we're trying to understand. So we take the attention away from the subject. Okay, well, that makes sense then, right? So every domain is going to have things like this, science, and in legal studies, what would it be?
hedging, boosters, being able to, if you're on the defense, you need to use, language that errs on the side of probability because you're trying to cast doubt as to whether or not it happened. Whereas if you're prosecuting, you would use, much more strong authoritative language. Your modal verbs, the modality would be a lot higher. Like, she must have done this. She couldn't have done. You wouldn't use words like could or maybe. But yeah, you would have words that play a big part in the legal genre that either assert your case or cast doubt.
We all, as teachers of our own domains, we have to know what are the kinds of, let's call them language features, because that's what you're just explaining, the modals, the boosters, and so on. We have to know what are the common language features that we need to access the communities that we need to get access, to join and to enter. But to get there, not everybody can get there just by giving them those model sentences or rules. You have to get there by breaking it down so that people can understand what is the meaning of the sentence. Well, I have to know that first before I can start to understand all the different constructions and what I need to know to sound authoritative or to focus in on the process and not have my voice, up front. And these are all let's not call them rules, but they are the patterns of what you will see in the legal documents or what you will see in science reports and so on, right? So I think that's essentially the important thing about when you have knowledge of grammar. We talked about knowledge before. When you have knowledge of grammar, particularly for the domain that you're in, you can do wonders for your students in accessing, first of all, the meaning. So you break it down, and you're like, okay, let's move that from a passive to an active, and then to bring it back to, but do you know why we use the passive? Because, in this genre, this is the more appropriate way. Because why? Don't just tell students, that's just the way it is. Because that's really what we say to students. I didn't invent the rules, guys, The point is students need to understand, so the thing is, the focus is on what happens, not who or what does it. And that's what gives me a bit more, power in my text, right? Because I'm telling you about the content. I'm telling you about what I found, right?
And I think the point is, if you don't know that for yourself, we have tools out there that can tell us and that can help us.
That's right.
And being able to understand that is a feature of a scientific report, the passive. I mean, we can do that for so many other language features that are out there for our discipline, or get AI to identify what are the most common language features in my area. How can I teach this and why is it important?
Yeah. Why would we be sitting here struggling, thinking, I'm so ashamed that I don't know that? And no, you don't have to be ashamed about that because now the tool is right there. And the important thing is you're not just looking at it and going, oh, that's what ChatGPT says. Oh, okay, done. But that you're engaging in this discussion that says, hey, wait, like how are we going to understand what we just read? Okay, so how are we going to explain this then to the students in a way where they're going to understand it, right? I think you could tell a student that, hey, guys, in a science report, it's like the emphasis is not on you, it's more on what happens. I think they're going to understand that. So this is giving you a way in. Right?
Good.
That's it.
Good.
That's what I think.
Wonderful.